Hello and welcome to this first look exploring session looking at Edward the Third. Yes, Edward the Third, which is actually the fourth Edward king that we've been looking at in these sessions. We've already looked at Edward the Fourth, but that was the third Edward that we looked. No, he was the second Edward we looked at. Edward the Second was the third Edward that we looked at, but Edward the First was the first Edward that we looked at. We are now looking at Edward the Third. So yes, this is a play from the early 1590s. We have already looked at the first two acts in a previous session, where the play, broadly speaking, set up that there's going to be some war fighty type stuff in France. We went on a massive digression, which we won't bother talking about here, and we now enter Act 3 with on the soil of France by the looks of it, but I could be wrong. So without further ado, we have these wonderful readers in the room to find out what happens next. And so reading Daddy Potato, King Edward today is...
Hi, I'm Tamara. I'm an actress, and damn you, Robert, you couldn't resist the spit take.
Yeah, I saw someone trying to take a drink, and therefore I hone in on them straight away. Reading King John, not to be confused with other King Johns who are available. King John, I think the second of France, is...
Hi, Rachael Nicole, actor in New Jersey. King John.
Yeah. Reading Lorraine and Frenchman number 1 is...
Briony, actor in Lincolnshire, oui.
Reading Prince Edward, Little Potato today is...
Hi, I'm Lynn. I'm a college composition teacher. I live in the northwestern United States.
Reading King of Bohemia and Artois today is...
Hello, I'm Helen Good. I'm a historian and I'm in Yorkshire.
Reading Charles and Citizen number 1 is...
Aliki, Chapple, actor, theatrical translator and theatre maker based in the west of England.
Reading Citizen number 2, Salisbury, and also Frenchman number 2 is...
Hi, I'm Valentina. I'm an actor and voiceover artist in London.
Reading A Polonian Captain, Citizen number 3, and Philip is...
Hello, I'm Sarah. I'm an actor, writer and director, and no one in this room has ever seen my feet.
Reading Gobin and Percy today is...
Hi, I'm Alan Scott, based in Suffolk, where we grow quite a number of potatoes.
Reading Audley and Mountford today is...
Hi, I'm Eric, and I think I have misplaced my feet.
And finally, reading Derby, Mariner, and Villiers is...
Steve Longstaffe, scholar of early modern drama based in northwest of England. These days I can't see my feet.
And I am your host, Robert Crighton, and the existence or whereabouts of my feet are for you to guess and for me to know. So, without further ado, we are going to dive into Act 3, Scene 1. We're introducing some new characters. We didn't encounter many of these last time. We did interact with Lorraine, Duke of Lorraine, but we have not met the King John of France, his two sons, Charles of Normandy and Philip, and also the Duke of Lorraine enter.
Here till our navy of 1,000 sail have made a breakfast to our foe by sea. Let us encamp to wait their happy speed. Lorraine, what readiness is Edward in? How hast thou heard that he provided is of martial furniture for this exploit?
To lay aside unnecessary soothing, and not to spend the time in circumstance, 'tis bruited for a certainty, my lord, that he's exceeding strongly fortified. His subjects flock as willingly to war, as if unto a triumph they were led.
England was wont to harbour malcontents, bloodthirsty and seditious Catelines, spendthrifts, and such as gape for nothing else but changing and alteration of the state. And is it possible that they are now so loyal themselves?
all but the Scot, who solemnly protests, as heretofore I have informed his grace, never to sheath his sword or take a truce.
Ah, that's the anchorage of some better hope. But on the other side, to think what friends King Edward hath retained in Netherland, among those ever-bibbing epicures, those frothy Dutchmen, puffed with double beer, that drink and swill in every place they come, doth not a little aggravate mine ire. Besides, we hear, the emperor conjoins, and installs him in his own authority. But all the mightier that their number is, the greater glory reaps the victory. Some friends have we beside domestic power, the stern Polonian and the warlike Dane, the king of Bohemia and of Sicily, are all become confederates with us, and, as I think, are marching hither apace.
Drums.
But soft, I hear the music of their drum, by which I guess that their approach is near.
Yes, enter the King of Bohemia with Danes and a Polonian captain with other soldiers another way.
King John of France, as league and neighbourhood requires when friends are any way distressed, I come to aid thee with my country's force.
And from great Moscow, faithful to the Turk, and lofty Poland, nurse of hardy men, I bring these servitors to fight for thee, who willingly will venture in thy cause.
Welcome, Bohemian king, and welcome all. This your great kindness I will not forget, besides your plentiful rewards and crowns, that from our treasury ye shall receive. There comes a hare-brained nation, decked in pride, the spoil of whom will be a treble gain. And now my hope is full and my joy complete. At sea we are as puissant as the force of Agamemnon in the haven of Troy. By land, with Xerxes we compare of strength, whose soldiers drank up rivers in their thirst. Then Bayard-like, blind, overweening Ned, to reach our imperial diadem, is either to be swallowed of the waves, or hacked to pieces when thou comest ashore.
Enter a mariner.
Near to the coast, I have descried, my lord, as I was by my watchful charge, the proud armado of King Edward's ships, which at the first, far off when I did ken, seemed as it were a grove of withered pines, but drawing near, their glorious bright aspect, their streaming ensigns, wrought of coloured silk like to a meadow full of sundry flowers, adorns the naked bosom of the earth. Majestical the order of their course, figuring the horned circle of the moon. And on the top gallant of the admiral, and likewise all the handmaids of his train, the arms of England and of France unite, are quartered equally by heralds' art. Thus, tightly carried with a merry gale, they plough the ocean hitherward amain.
Dare he already crop the fleur de luce? I hope, the honey being gathered thence, he, with the spider, afterward approached, shall suck forth deadly venom from the leaves. But where's our navy? How are they prepared to wing themselves against this flight of ravens?
They, having knowledge, brought them by the scouts, did break from anchor straight, and puffed with rage no otherwise than were their sails with wind made forth, as when the empty eagle flies to satisfy his hungry griping maw.
There's for thy news. Return unto thy bark, and if thou escape the bloody stroke of war, and do survive the conflict, come again, and let us hear the manner of the fight.
And exit the mariner.
Me in space, my lords, 'tis best we be dispersed to several places, lest they chance to land. First you, my lord, with your Bohemian troops, shall pitch your battalions on the lower hand. My eldest son, the Duke of Normandy, together with the aid of Moscovite, shall climb the higher ground another way. Here in the middle coast, betwixt you both, Philip, my youngest boy, and I will lodge. So, Lor, be gone, and look unto your charge. You stand for France, an empire fair and large.
And we're just going to pause there. Everybody exits at this point to go off and do what they need to do, except for King John and Philip, who are going to stay on stage. We will rejoin them in a moment. We've got allies. We've got hopes and fears. We've got boats turning up and a mariner. The enemy is at the gates. Thoughts on this scene? Getting a sense of narrative being thrown at us here. There's stuff coming. The daddy potato is on his way. I will stop calling him that. Thoughts from the room? Anyone want to leap in? Briony.
Just to quickly comment on the lovely bit of casual racism we've started with, stereotyping the Netherlands and all inhabitants thereof. Always fun.
Helen, then Eric.
I thought the description of the English fleet was quite interesting. The idea that they were, what he's describing is a very modern fleet, and he calls it an armada. And the crescent formation, which they have apparently taken up, is the formation that the armada used. So I think that's the, I very much doubt if Edward's fleet did have that sort of formation, because they would be very different ships. But that's moderately interesting. And the fact that they note that the Edward has already quartered the English arms with the French arms.
Eric?
I just liked the sort of, well, not quite detailed, but like, sort of King John going, yeah, if you don't die in this war, come back and tell me about it. So clearly he's not on the front lines. It doesn't really matter to him as much as, other sort of battles, I guess.
Yeah, he's not leading the front. He's sending everybody else off. They're there to basically wait for the battle to happen and then let other people come back on again. We've seen similar things in Tamburlaine, where you leave some characters on stage while the battle's happening over there, which is relatively neat and tidy. If you don't necessarily have an awful lot of soldiers to throw at this text. And it's something that structurally I've been noting is in trying to doubling to pass out parts to everyone. Is that actually, in terms of parts, there aren't that many major characters in this play. So that seems like that's a deliberate thing to actually keep perhaps the cast down. On history plays, we expect cast of thousands to be doubled in really quite excessive ways. This one seems quite constrained. It may change as we go further on. I'm not projecting yet into the future. Just to go to Stephen. Muted at the moment.
Further to Helen's point, I wonder as well if we're being primed for something visual when and if we get to a battle, because the whole point of this heraldry stuff is if they're all wearing armor, which I've no idea if they would be or they wouldn't, but is that we are to notice. These will turn up on stage at some point, so it's quite a sneaky way of getting the point in if indeed that's what we're going to end up with.
And just to pick back on Briony's point about the way people are describing, because these are various confederations of forces, and the way that these characters are describing their enemies, as opposed to the people who are on their side, and whether there are similarities and differences there, and whether the English are going to do the same in a moment. So I'm interested to see whether that goes somewhere or whether that's just something to be said about what the French are saying here. Stephen.
Well, yeah, perhaps it's also a contemporary point in the sense that various English people were involved in the Low Countries at this time, which was sort of fighting the Spanish, and so there's sort of righteous Protestant war going on here. So it's quite sort of it sort of fits that the French king is not going to be very keen on the Dutch, because in the time of the play the Dutch are Protestant and fighting against the kind of Catholic superpower, perhaps.
Other thoughts before we go forward? Okay, we're going to return to King John and Philip. They've sent everybody off to do the fighty stuff. King John, just to let you flag up, the word coming up is not concept, it's conceit. Just so you know, just noticing the odd typo. I don't normally say them out loud, but you're about to say the word, so I think it was only fair to change the P to an I. So the last couple of lines of King John as he turns and chats to Philip while battle happens elsewhere.
Now tell me, Philip, what is thy conceit, touching the challenge that the English make?
I say, my lord, claim Edward what he can, and bring he ne'er so plain a pedigree, 'tis you are in the possession of the crown, and that's the surest point of all the law. But were it not, yet ere he should prevail, I'll make a conduit of my dearest blood, or chase those straggling upstarts home again.
Well said, young Philip. Call for bread and wine, that we may cheer our stomachs with repast, to look our foes more sternly in the face.
There's a battle afar off, apparently.
Now is begun the heavy day at sea. Fight, Frenchmen, fight. Be like the field of bears, when they defend their younglings in the caves. Stir, angry Nemesis, the happy helm, that with the sulphur battles of your rage, the English fleet may be dispersed and sunk.
Bang! There is a shot.
Oh, father, how this echoing cannon shot, like sweet harmony, digests my eats.
Now, boy, thou hearest what thundering terror 'tis, to buckle for a kingdom's sovereignty, the earth with giddy trembling when it shakes, or when the exaltations of the air breaks in extremity of lightning flash, affrights not more than kings, when they dispose, to shew the rancour of their high swollen hearts.
And someone sounds a retreat.
Retreat is sounded. One side hath the worst. Oh, if it be the French, sweet fortune turn, and in thy turning change the forward winds, that with advantage of a favor sky, our men may vanquish and the other fly.
Enter the mariner again.
My heart misgives. Say, mirror of pale death, to whom belongs the honor of this day? Relate, I pray thee, if thy breath will serve, the sad discourse of this discomfiture.
I will, my lord, my gracious sovereign. France has ta'en the foil. Boasting Edward triumphs with success. These iron-hearted navies, when last I was reporter to your grace, both full of angry spleen, of hope and fear, hastening to meet each other in the face, at last conjoined, and by their admiral, our admiral, encountered many shot. By this, the other that beheld these twain gave earnest penny of a further wrack, like fiery dragons took their haughty flight, and likewise meeting from their smoky wombs sent many grim ambassadors of death. Then gan the day turn to gloomy night, and darkness did as well enclose the quick as those that were but newly reft of life. No leisure served for friends to bid farewell, and if it had, the hideous noise was such as each to other seemed deaf and dumb. Purple the sea, whose channel filled as fast with streaming gore that from the main it fell, as did her gushing moisture break into the crannied cleftures of the through-shot planks. Here flew a head, dissevered from the trunk. There mangled arms and legs were tossed aloft as when a whirlwind takes the summer dust and scatters it in the middle of the air. Then might ye see the reeling vessels split and tottering sink into the ruthless flood, until their lofty tops were seen no more. All shifts were tried, both for defence and hurt, and now the effect of valour and of force, of resolution and of cowardice, we lively picture. How the one for fame, the other by compulsion laid about. Much did the Nonpareil, that brave ship. So did the Black Snake of Bullen, than which a bonnier vessel never yet spread sail. But all in vain. Both sun and wind and tide revolted all unto our foeman's side, that we perforce were fain to give them way, and they are landed. Thus my tale is done. We have untimely lost, they have won.
Then rests there nothing but with present speed to join our several forces all in one, and bid them battle ere they range too far. Come, gentle Philip, let us hence depart. The soldier's words have pierced thy father's heart.
And they exit. Stephen, I should point out you did say one line slightly wrong. It should be pronounced ambassadors of boing, 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 death. That's how it's supposed to be said. That's a reference for those out there who know what I'm talking about. Yes, you do. Otherwise, nobody else in the room. I'm not going to explain why I just did that. We will move forward. Google it. That mariner's speech, isn't it, Fab? What a great, that mariner has a way with words. Lynn.
Yeah, I just was scrolling through the scene. I'm like, oh, that's a really long speech. Who is that? The mariner. So this long, beautiful, fabulous messenger speech feels a little formally archaic. It doesn't really, it feels a little weird because this doesn't feel like a classical tragedy up to now. And the long, detailed, highly metaphorical messenger speech is a formal feature of a kind of different type of drama.
Yes, it's interesting. We were literally doing something like this last night when we were reading kids' Cornelia, or translation of Cornelia, where there was a lengthy description of somebody's death at sea, in fact, actually. The coincidences this week are just stacking up. I'm loving it. Briony.
My train of thought's just completely derailed. Sorry, I had something, and it's gone.
I'll jump to Helen. I'm sure it will come back again, and then to Rachael.
I don't know any. Is there a chronicle history for this?
Oh, well, almost certainly it's covered by lots of them, yeah.
I mean, do we know which one is being relied on?
I can have a little. Stephen might be able to answer that, and I can have a little look up as well. Is there a reason why you're asking before we?
No, it just struck me as being very, very chronicle history dependent type speech.
Hollingshed is mentioned, definitely. Apparently a bit from the Palace of Pleasure as well. That is all I currently see in front of me. But other things may be available. Stephen.
The Arden Free edition claims that Froissart is behind the whole thing. That there are bits in it that can only be traced. So it actually, the Arden Free suggests that it comes from somebody who is very familiar with the French chronicle, actually, which is quite unusual. But he then ends up in Hollingshed, so it's all as usual. It's all complicated.
Yeah, sources speaking to sources, therefore muddying the waters a bit. Rachael, then I think I saw Briony. So the thought is back. So Rachael first.
No, it's just the scene starts off comedic. That it's that the king's not actually going to battle himself. I feel like perhaps in the future Edward might, maybe he won't, but I feel like maybe this is a little character decision that they're also putting out there. And then also just the beauty of the mariner's speech. There's some parts of it that are just, I feel like the purple, the sea, that's so simplistic way of saying something, but it's so very descriptive, and it puts into the minds of the audience to imagine it. Just beautiful coming in there.
Briony.
Yeah, so because Lynn was saying about how it seems slightly kind of almost out of place the way it's delivered and stuff, and to me it almost gives it like a weird awkward formality of like a job progress review, which I guess it kind of is a little bit for this guy, you know, because these are his betters that he's having to talk to, and it's not like the long-winded, over-exaggerating, like shaggy dog story type speech. Like Rachael said, there's some really nice, concise but super descriptive moments in there, and I just think there's so many different ways that could play out on stage as well. You know, how physical you wanted to make it and stuff. There's a lot there that you could kind of excavate with a bit of time.
Yeah, and you know, it's great. You know, he's said to be a mariner in terms of the way it's described. But I don't know whether within the play world there are that many clues as to who this guy is. You know, unless I missed them. So did I miss any? Do throw them out at me, Helen.
I did note that the first time when he was bringing reasonable news, he got a substantial tip. And the second time, he got absolutely nothing.
Yeah, so maybe he is more of a professional, messenger, scout, and that actually, to a degree, it's his job to be quite good at conveying information. This is me, working hard to give this guy a backstory. He's worked his way up through the profession. He's made his way, and also you've got to remember there's good clarity there in just the bottom line. The conclusion to his statement is that you've lost, they've won. So he is quite clear, which is a dangerous thing to say because it invites people to cut the rest of your speech. Briony.
It's quite a dangerous thing as well to be so bluntly honest sometimes, with royalty in these situations. We've seen them shoot messengers before now in various pieces, so yeah.
Yeah, you don't want to be delivering bad news to kings. Other thoughts, Lynn?
Yeah, changing the subject a little bit, but going back to something that I think Rachael touched on about there's something comic about the beginning of this scene. I think that is in the design, the line about, let's get some bread and wine. We wouldn't want to go to battle hungry. I think maybe that's supposed to reflect poorly on John and Philip, that they're snacking while the battle is going on.
Yeah, because Philip actually, says he's worried about his digestion.
No, I don't think that's...
I don't know. Oh, Father, how this echoing cannon shot, like sweet harmony, digests my Kate's. That seems to be literally what he's saying.
Honestly, don't think it is.
What do you think he's saying then?
Delights my ears. I know the Arden disagrees, but I don't care.
I'm not looking at the Arden. I'm looking at a different edition. I've got digest my Kate here.
I'm sure it's delights my ears in the, before the compositor got hold of it.
Stephen is talking, but not audibly.
Just saying the Arden has digest my Kates.
Mm.
But
maybe it's an aid to digestion rather than a hinderer.
What does digest my Kates mean? Kates are delicates?
Yeah, they're food, little food things.
Nibbles.
Mm.
So, this is nice. War is nice music to digest by, is what you think it's saying?
Mm.
No, I am absolutely convinced in my own mind that before the compositor got hold of it, it was delights my ears.
Okay. I'm not disputing that. I was asking what the other option meant.
Yes, but that is definitely the other option. Yes.
To make this judgment.
Yes, Stephen.
Does anyone want to know what the Arden explanation of all of that was? It's basically music as an aid to digestion. So if the cannon fire is like music, that helps me digest my delicates.
Which, if they're all eating, because yes, if they're having a little picnic rather than fighting, that does suggest the comic vein that Lynn is talking about there.
Fair enough.
It makes sense that that the other side is being portrayed being a bit of idiots.
Mm. Especially as it counterpoints to the supreme dignity of our mariner. Sarah.
Yeah, I'm just super indelicate, but I assumed it was a more immediate aid to digestion.
Same.
Yeah, but actually the cannon shot had frightened him.
Brown trousers.
Yes,
That's what I was thinking too.
And that
Okay,
would be more comic. That would definitely be comic, but I don't know if it's right.
I feel this is one that that will come out in workshop during rehearsals as to where the scene is going to throw itself. But we've got options here, haven't we? We've definitely given ourselves options as to whether they're enjoying themselves with the sounds, they're afraid, or whether there is a completely different version of the line. So anyway, we're going to go on to Act 3, Scene 2, as it has been labelled. And we are going to have a selection of citizens. And there is a bonus part, I think, available coming up as well that I've missed, because I don't think I've said anyone is a woman, have I? Nobody's been given that as a random part. So who's not got a lot going on? Who's relatively free? Nobody's leaping up and down, so I'll go for Lynn. I don't think you're in this scene. If you could be the woman coming up, please.
Fair enough.
I think otherwise everyone is covered. So anyway, enter 2 Frenchmen, a woman, and 2 little children. Don't worry about the little children. I don't think they say anything. They meet them and other citizens. So various random people enter.
Well met, my masters. Oh no, what's the news? And wherefore are you laden with the stuff? What is it, quarter day that you remove and carry bags and baggage too?
Quarter day? Aye, quartering day, I fear. Have you not heard of the news that flies abroad?
What news?
How the French navy is destroyed at sea, and that the English army has arrived.
What then?
What then, quoth you? Why, it's not time to fly when envy and destruction is so nigh.
Content thee, man, they are far enough from hands. We'll be met, I warrant ye, to their cost, before they break so far into the realm.
Aye, so the grasshopper doth spend the time in mirthful jollity till winter come, and then too late he would redeem his time, when frozen cold hath nipped his careless head. He that no sooner will provide a cloak than when he sees it doth begin to rain, may peradventure for his negligence be thoroughly washed when he suspects it not. We that have charge and such a train as this, must look in time to look for them and us. Least, when we would, we cannot be relieved.
Like you then despair of all success, and think your country will be subjugate.
We cannot tell. 'Tis good to fear the worst.
Yet rather fight then, like unnatural sons, forsake your loving parents in distress.
Tush! They that have already taken arms are many fearful millions in respect of that small handful of our enemies, but 'tis a rightful quarrel must prevail. Edward is a son unto our late king's sister, when John Valois is 3 degrees removed.
Besides, there goes a prophecy abroad, published by one that was a friar once, whose oracles have many times proved true. And now he says the time will shortly come when, as a lion roused in the west, shall carry hence the fleur de luce of France. These, I can tell ye, and such like surmises, strike many Frenchmen cold unto the heart.
Enter a Frenchman.
Fly, countrymen and citizens of France, sweet flowering peace, the root of happy life, is quite abandoned and expulsed the land. Instead of whom ransacked constraining war sits like to ravens upon your houses' tops. Slaughter and mischief walk within your streets, and unrestrained make havoc as they pass. The form whereof even now myself beheld upon this fair mountain whence I came, for so far of as I directed mine eyes, I might perceive 5 cities all on fire, cornfields and vineyards burning like an oven. And as the reeking vapour in the wind turned but aside, I likewise might discern the poor inhabitants escaped the flame, fall numberless upon the soldiers' pikes. 3 ways these dreadful ministers of wrath do tread the measure of their tragic march. Upon the right hand comes the conquering king, upon the left is hot unbridled sun, and in the midst our nation's glittering host, all which, though distant yet conspire in one to leave a desolation where they come. Fly, therefore, citizens, if you be wise. Seek out some habitation further off. Here is you stay. Your wives will be abused. Your treasure shall shared before your weeping eyes. Shelter you yourselves, for now the storm doth rise. Away, away, methinks I hear their drums. Ah, wretched France, I greatly fear thy fall. Thy glory shaketh like a tottering wall.
And so we have this interesting mirror scene from the previous one. So whereas the previous one we're having news of bad sea things happening being given to the king, here we have citizens debating what's going on, and then we get the news that the English are coming. The English are coming. Yeah, interesting stuff. I'm really interested in counterpointing one scene after another. Alan?
I think I'm right in saying that at this time Calais was still an English possession, subject to correction by others. But what struck me was that this is the second time we've had quite a long and fairly poetic speech by a one-shot character, effectively, following the mariner in the previous sequence. This Frenchman who comes in and gives this very interesting and well-written speech, which strikes me as being a slightly unusual way of doing things, because normally the exposition monkeys or messengers get to a fairly terse and not massively well-constructed speeches.
Well, yeah, I don't know about the quality, but yeah, I mean, it's interesting here because it's a crowd scene as well, that you've got so many people to react to it as well, potentially, and that's what's always interesting about this kind of scene, is how many reactants you have it, to feed it. Lynn, then Helen.
Yes, Alan's observation is absolutely right. Like, we've had 2 like kind of throwaway characters with these long, very moving speeches. But I think that's kind of consistent with what Robert was thinking about earlier, how it's a large cast, but there are not very many major parts. So you've got a bunch of, imagining the original production conditions, and of course this is all conjecture, that you have a core of very experienced actors, and when they're not on stage, they're a mariner or they're a Frenchman, and you have your good experienced actors in these throwaway parts, but you give them these long pieces of text to memorize and to deliver. So that's kind of consistent with the idea that you have a big cast, but just a few major parts and a core company of experienced actors. Does that make sense?
Though I do wonder whether it actually could go down to a smaller cast than we sometimes think of. I'm wondering structurally now, actually, doing a little more digging into how this might all flow into itself. I have various thoughts that I'll probably say off camera on that. Yeah, Helen, sorry.
My thought was that this Frenchman is in fact the mariner. He's left the king, he's set off inland, runs into some citizens. I think it's the same guy.
You're trying to build an extended Mariner universe, trying to give him more thing, rather than just there's a lot of people delivering bad news.
Yeah, I mean, he seems like the same guy, and on stage it would make a lot of sense for him to be the same guy.
No one would ever be pleased to see him. Aliki.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that because he's talking about land war, whereas the other was very specifically about a naval battle. This is about cities burning, vineyards and cornfields and inhabitants and the soldiers' pikes. I think they're two different people, but I think in a modern production, you might well get away with pre-recording them as newsreaders and having kind of everybody huddled around the TV screen going, "Ugh," instead.
Yes. Other thoughts about the citizens? I don't know if any of the citizens had any thoughts about the sort of labelled as citizens and a woman. So I don't know if the citizens are gendered or not. I don't know. It's an interesting sort of collection. But we have 4 people already, at least 4 people, and children. So we have the possibility of children here, and maybe that's a question of also if you've got a company that's using boy actors and you don't necessarily have that many female parts, what do you give them walk on children roles as well? Briony.
It's a really small point, but I just think it's a bit interesting and random that they're all French, and yet only one of them is labelled as a Frenchman. The woman's just a woman, even though she's presumably a French woman, and the citizens are French citizens, but they're just citizens.
Yeah, yes, it is slightly odd in that sense. I'm not sure precisely how they're. I'm fairly certain this is how it's, or broadly speaking, I mean, it might be first and second rather than citizens 1 and 2. But I'm fairly certain that these are how they're labelled. Yeah, why call them Frenchmen when everybody here is clearly French? Alan.
That goes back to the question which I did pose, which I was half expecting Helen to have come back on, because I have a feeling that at the time in question, Calais was still undoubtedly an English possession.
Helen?
No, unfortunately, the English possession of Calais came out, I think, of this campaign or a subsequent one. The English king owned an enormous quantity of France, but it tended to be where the good wine came from.
I guess.
I mean, it was the Dordogne area, Gascony. They had vast quantities of it, and obviously they claimed Normandy from the Duke. But the Calais and the Pas de Calais conquest, you remember the burghers of Calais in their shirts.
Briony, were you waving again? Valentina after.
Yeah, just back to the point of how these minor characters are labelled, just in that, like, they could have given us a bit more information, because at least, like, the mariner being labelled as the mariner, we've got a bit of information about who he might be. We've got something to play with there. Whereas, if this Frenchman had been labelled differently, we perhaps might have gleaned a bit more about who he really is and stuff.
Yeah, the mariner we know at least should have a sou'wester or something, but a Frenchman, we're just stumbling into terrible stereotypes here, aren't we? Valentina, then Aliki.
Yeah, no, I was thinking about the citizens. I think it's their coping strategies are quite interesting, and also the fact that, like, at least citizen number 2 doesn't seem to care really who's on the throne. It's just like his coping mechanism is like, I'm gonna go, not sure where, but he's gonna go. But he's like, at certain points, like, yeah, well, somebody will prevail. Either way, it's in line with the throne, which seems a bit like, I don't know, like involuntary spectators to this whole thing. But
there's that thing of it doesn't matter who we vote in, the government always is always in power kind of attitude, isn't it? Aliki, then Eric, then Briony.
I guess I'm not that interested in who these individual citizens are, because I'm thinking it more as a vox pop, an impression of what do you do when the war is on the way. So you've got the person bearing news, and you've got the people reacting to it in various ways, which are the ways that people still react. Our country is the best country. Nobody's going to get here. Are you out of your mind? Flee!
Yeah. And it is nice that we have a scene where the citizenry are presented here, and not in necessarily massively patronising ways either. They're not comedy citizens. There may be comedy to be found in there, but they are people. And yes, war is coming, and we're not just having another scene with some royals, and that's quite nice. Eric.
I was just wondering if the woman's prophecy is basically like Medusa coming in from a different play.
I don't think she's tried to sell anyone anything. Briony, Lynn, then Rachael.
Just based off of what Valentina was just saying, I think it shows. I mean, I know all reactions kind of are possible today, but again, it stands for us as well. These people seem to have been through quite a lot, as people, in terms of putting up with their ridiculous leaders being incompetent. Like I say, still very true today.
Lynn, then Rachael, and then Helen. Then we will move on.
Yeah, I mean, it is striking that the citizens aren't given a nationality, and then the messenger is. The citizens not having a nationality, and if it's a little ambiguous whether they're kind of French or kind of English, then they get to speak for the playwright's political agenda of legitimizing the war. Oh, our king is not as closely related to the previous royal family as Edward's mother, so maybe this is a legit war. And when the prophecies say things are going to go wrong for us, so the citizens are kind of propping up the legitimacy of Edward's claim.
Yes. Then Rachael, then Helen.
Just that there seems to be a pattern in this, that there's a joke, and then it gets serious, and there's a joke, and then it gets serious, and it's not the joke is in there for the humor. I feel the joke is in there just to pull out from. Just to pull it out like a rug underneath the audience afterward, like, should I have laughed at that? And also, I feel like the higher ranking people are just used for laughs more than, people who would, in other plays maybe be comedy servants. And then I don't know, they're just the King John and, that's all I had to say about this thing. Go away from me. Go to somebody else.
Cool. Helen.
I was just going to say that civil war was the normal state of affairs in France at this time. I mean, at the time of the play, not at the time in which the play is set.
Lovely. Okay. If you had any other thoughts that might have been lost during our brief Wi-Fi downage, we'll throw it in a moment in the future. Hold on to those thoughts if you have them. Otherwise, we're going to dive into Act 3, Scene 3. And first time this session, I think we're saying hello to King Edward et al. So enter King Edward and the Earl of Derby with soldiers and Gobin de Grace.
Where's the Frenchman by whose cunning guide we found the shallow of this river Somme, and had directions how to pass the sea?
Here, my good lord.
How art thou called? Tell me thy name.
Gobin de Grace, if it please your excellence.
Then, Gobin, for the service thou hast done, we here enlarge and give thee liberty, and for recompense besides this good, thou shalt receive 500 marks in gold. I know not how we should have met our son, whom now in heart I wish I might behold.
Enter Artois.
Good news, my lord. The prince is hard at hand, and with him comes Lord Audley and the rest, whom since our landing we could never meet.
Enter Prince Edward, Lord Audley, and soldiers, etc.
Welcome, fair prince. How hast thou sped, my son, since thy arrival on the coast of France?
Successfully, I thank the gracious heavens. Some of their strongest cities we have won, as Barfleur, Lowe, Crotoy, and Carentan. and others wasted, leaving at our heels a wide apparent field and beaten path for solitariness to progress in. Yet those that would submit we kindly pardoned, and who in scorn refused our proffered peace endured the penalty of sharp revenge.
Ah, France, why shouldst thou be thus obstinate against the kind embracement of thy friends? How gently had we thought to touch thy breast and set our foot upon thy tender mould, but that in froward and disdainful pride thou, like a skittish and untamed colt, dost start aside and strike us with thy heels. But tell me, Ned, in all thy warlike cause, hast thou not seen the usurping king of France?
Yes, my good lord, and not 2 hours ago, with full 100,000 fighting men, upon the one side of the river's bank, and on the other both his multitudes. I feared he would have cropped our smaller power, but happily, perceiving your approach, he hath withdrawn himself to Cressy plains, where, as it seemeth by his good array, he means to bid us battle presently.
Ye shall be welcome. That's the thing we crave.
Enter King John, Dukes of Normandy and Lorraine, King of Bohemia, young Philip, and soldiers.
Edward, know that John, the true king of France, musing thou shouldst encroach upon his land, and in thy tyrannous proceeding slay his faithful subjects and subvert his towns, spits in thy face, and in this manner following upbraids thee with thine arrogant intrusion. First I condemn thee for a fugitive, a thievish pirate, and a needy mate, one that hath either no abiding place, or else inhabited some barren soil, where neither herb nor fruitful grain is had. Doest altogether live by pilfering. Next, insomuch thou hast infringed thy faith, broke league and solemn covenant made with me, I hold thee for a false pernicious wretch. And last of all, although I scorn to cope with one so much inferior to myself, yet in respect thy thirst is all for gold, thy labor rather to be feared than loved, to satisfy thy lust in either part, here am I come, and with me have I brought exceeding store of treasure, pearl, and coin. Leave, therefore, now to persecute the weak, and armed entering conflict with the armed. Let it be seen, mongst other petty thefts, how thou canst win this pillage manfully.
If gall or wormwood have a pleasant taste, then is thy salutation honey sweet. But as the one hath no such properties, so is the other most satirical. Yet how I regard thy worthless taunts. If thou have uttered them to foil my fame or dim the reputation of my birth, know that thy wolfish barking cannot hurt, if slyly to insinuate with the world, and with a strumpet's artificial line, to paint thy vicious and deformed cause, be well assured the counterfeit will fade, and in the end thy foul defects be seen. And if thou didst it to provoke me on, as who should say I were but timorous, or coldly negligent, did need a spur, bethink thyself how slack I was at sea, how since my landing I have won no towns, entered no further but upon the coast, and there have ever since securely slept. But if I have been otherwise employed, imagine, Valois, whether I intend to skirmish, not for pillage, but for the crown which thou dost wear, and that I vow to have, or one of us shall fall into his grave.
Look not for cross invectives at our hands, nor railing execrations of despite. Let creeping serpents hid in hollow banks sting with their tongues. We have remorseless swords, and they shall plead for us in our affairs. Yet thus much, briefly, by my father's leave, as all the immodest poison of thy throat is scandalous and most notorious lies, and our pretended quarrel is truly just, so end the battle when we meet today. May either of us prosper and prevail, or, luckless, cursed, receive eternal shame.
That needs no further question, and I know his conscience witnesseth it is my right. Therefore, Valois, say, wilt thou yet resign before the sickle's thrust into the corn, or that enkindled fury turn to flame?
Edward, I know what right thou hast in France, and ere I basely will resign my crown, this champion field shall be a pool of blood, and all our prospect as a slaughter-house.
Aye, that approves thee, tyrant, what thou art. No father, king, or shepherd of thy realm, not but one that tears her entrails with thy hands, and like a thirsty tiger sucks her blood.
You peers of France, why do you follow him that is so prodigal to spend your lives?
Whom should they follow, aged impotent, but he that is their true-born sovereign?
Upbraidest thou him, because within his face time hath engraved deep characters of age? No, these grave scholars of experience, like stiff-grown oaks, will stand immovable when whirlwind quickly turns up younger trees.
Any of thy fathers out, king, but thyself, before this present time? Edward's great lineage, by the mother's side, 500 years hath held the sceptre up. Judge then, conspirators, by this descent, which is the true-born sovereign, this or that?
Father, range your battles, prate no more. These English fain would spend the time in words that, night approaching, they might escape unfought.
Lords and my loving subjects, now's the time that your intended force must bide the touch. Therefore, my friends, consider this in brief. He that you fought for is your natural king. He against whom you fight, a foreigner. He that you fight for rules in clemency, and reigns you with a mild and gentle bit. He against whom you fight, if he prevail, will straight enthrone himself in tyranny, make slaves of you, and with a heavy hand curtail and curb your sweetest liberty. Then, to protect your country and your king, let but the haughty courage of your hearts answer the number of your able hands, and we shall quickly chase these fugitives. For what's this, Edward, but a belly god, a tender and lascivious wanton, that other day was almost dead for love? And what, I pray you, is his goodly guard? Such as but scant them of their chines of beef, and take away their downy feather beds, and presently they are as resty stiff as 'twere a many overridden jades. Then, Frenchmen, scorn that such should be your lords, and rather bind ye them in captive bands.
Vive le
Vive le
roi!
roi!
Vive le roi!
God save King John of France! War!
Now on this plain of Crecy, spread yourselves, and, Edward, when thou darest, begin the fight.
Exeunt King John, Charles, Philip, Lorraine, Bohemia, and forces, etc.
We presently will meet thee, John of France, and English lords. Let us resolve this day, either to clear us of that scandalous crime, or be entombed in our innocence. And Ned, because this battle is the first that ever yet thou foughtest in pitch field, as ancient custom is of martialists, to dub thee with the tip of chivalry, in solemn manner we will give thee arms. Come therefore, heralds, orderly bring forth a strong attirement for the prince my son.
And enter 4 heralds, bringing in a coat of armour, a helmet, a lance, and a shield.
Edward Plantagenet, in the name of God, as with this armour I impale thy breast, so be thy noble unrelenting heart walled in with flint of matchless fortitude, that never base affection enter there. Fight and be valiant, conquer where thou comest. Now follow, lords, and do him honour too.
Edward Plantagenet, Prince of Wales, as I do set this helmet on thy head, wherewith the chamber of thy brain is fenced, so may thy temples with Bellona's hand be still adorned with laurel victory. Fight and be valiant. Conquer where thou comest.
Edward Plantagenet, Prince of Wales, receive this lance into thy manly hand. Use it in fashion of a brazen pen to draw forth bloody stratagems in France, and print thy valiant deeds in honour's book. Fight and be valiant, vanquish where thou comest.
Edward Plantagenet, Prince of Wales, hold, take this target, wear it on thy arm, and may the view thereof, like Perseus' shield, astonish and transform the gazing foes to senseless images of meagre death. Fight and be valiant, conquer where thou comest.
King Edward?
Sorry, my dock went nuts. Now once there naught but knighthood, which deferred we leave, till thou hast won it in the field.
My gracious father, and ye forward peers, this honor you have done me animates and cheers my green yet scarce appearing strength with comfortable good presaging signs, no otherwise than did old Jacob's words as he breathed his blessing on his sons. These hallowed gifts of yours, when I profane or use them not to glory of my God, to patronage of fatherless and poor, or for the benefit of England's peace, benumb my joints, wax feeble both mine arms, wither my heart, that like a sapless tree I may remain the map of infamy.
Then thus our steeled battles shall be ranged. The leading of the wayward Ned is thine. To dignify whose lusty spirit the more, we temper it with Audley's gravity, that courage and experience joined in one, your manage may be second unto none. For the main battles I will guide myself, and Derby in the rearward march behind, that orderly disposed and set in ray, let us to horse, and God grant us the day.
And they exit. So interesting things going on in this scene, because we go from come and have a go if you think you're hard enough to this interesting little scene where the herald's coming in, and you've got investiture of the prince and giving him all his things, and it's a really interesting scene. I'm interested in the way the language the various rival kings are using with each other. The King Edward, he's calling his rival Valois. He's not going to call him by anything that sounds like a regal title. No, there are subtle digs and insults in the way they address each other before they get to just being really insulting. The way that scene progresses. And a reuniting of father and son, and some random dude called I'm insisting that his name is not Gobin. It's Gobin. I'm sorry. I don't know who the hell he is. I don't know what he's doing here. But I'm going with the bouquet bucket pronunciation here. He might want to call himself Gobin de Gures, but it's Gobin, isn't it? He's definitely a Gobin. I'm riffing now. Please, somebody wave at me. Aliki, then Lynn.
So I really enjoyed the beginning of this scene, and it made me think of what we know about primate wars. Chimps will line up in two lines against each other and trade insults and throw poo and stuff like that until they work themselves up into a battle frenzy. And that's what's going on. And then followed by this beautifully ceremonial, almost fairy tale-like bestowing of virtues on the young warrior. Just really enjoyable, really.
So if we do it as a film, I so want to put jump cuts in now. Just suddenly to a wildlife documentary as a counterpoint, because I like that very much. Lynn.
Yeah, a couple of unrelated things that I noticed. This sort of the Act 1 check where somebody twits Edward with his obsessive crush on the Countess of Salisbury. So we haven't entirely forgotten that, although I don't know, that might seem a little dissonant in performance. It's like, why are you bringing that up again? That episode is over. But it did get my attention. what was the other thing? Oh, I think my other observation, which was unrelated to that, is gone out of my elderly brain. Sorry.
It may come back. Rootle about. Have you looked behind the sofa? It might be there. Yeah, and of course especially for the earlier audiences, the moment you start name checking words like Cressy, you start going, I think I know where this is going. Lynn, was that where you were going?
I do remember it was just sort of, I'm going to wonder aloud about the repeated actual naming of the name Valois, which was the French royal family at the time the play was written, and but they were dying out, and I don't know if the play the audience or the playwright or the English society in general would have been aware of that. I mean, they were sort of overbred and sickly and constantly dying young at this point. So if you'd had your historical crystal ball, you would have known that the Valois family was going to be replaced by the Bourbons at some point right around now. So I mean, I wonder if that naming the Valois reminds everyone, oh yeah, the Valois, they were genetically inferior, basically. I wonder if that was going on.
I like that as a thought. You've also now made me think of a chocolate biscuit. Briony,
also thinking of biscuits now, but no, because Lynn's just reminded me of this wonderful countess that we had yesterday, and she was really such a well-written character, although not important enough to have like an actual name. But since then, well, who have we had? Just woman and a load of men. It's been a proper sausage fest, and I want to complain about that.
I'm so stealing that. A proper sausage fest.
Yeah, it's a regular complaint. I think to be fair, there's been quite a few of them. Because if we're thinking of the structure of a company, there are parts available to spare. It's not like we've hit a quota here of how many actors you've got available. It seems like there's a reason why the children turned up earlier. It's because they're not using that many female characters in this play at all. So that seems to be a choice that's being made here. Briony, did you want me to come back to you, or other thoughts in the room as well?
Just going to say, like, yeah, it's not like he can't write, or whoever this is can't write decent female characters. It's not like, yeah, because they did it all right in the first and second act, so no excuses.
Well, the question of they as well is another vexing point. But we will move on from that, and we will go to Act 3, Scene 4, as we have it here. We just had the French going off, the English doing a lovely little ceremony, and they've all gone off for war. And now we have some war. There's some alarumsing going on. Enter many a Frenchman flying. I'm going to go with running. There. I mean, if they're flying, I will be very impressed. Running Frenchmen. After them, Prince Edward running, and then enter King John and the Duke of Lorraine.
Oh, Lorraine, say, what mean are men to fly? Our number is far greater than our foes.
The garrison of Genoise, my lord, that came from Paris weary with their march, grudging to be so suddenly employed, no sooner in the forefront took their place, but straight retiring so dismayed the rest, as likewise they betook themselves to flight, in which for haste to make a safe escape, more in the clustering throng are pressed to death than by the enemy 1,000-fold.
O hapless fortune, let us yet essay, if we can counsel some of them to stay.
And they exit, enter in quick succession, King Edward and Audley.
Lord Audley, whilst our son is in the chase, withdraw our powers unto this little hill, and here a season let us breathe ourselves.
I will, my lord.
And exit Audley. There's the sound of a retreat, and King Edward has materialized from somewhere.
just dooming heaven, whose secret providence to our gross judgment is inscrutable, how are we bound to praise thy wondrous works, that hast this day given way unto the right, and made the wicked stumble at themselves?
Enter Artois.
Rescue! King Edward! Rescue for thy son!
Rescue, Artois? What, is he prisoner, or by violence fell beside his horse?
Neither, my lord, but narrowly beset with turning Frenchmen, whom he did pursue. And 'tis impossible he should escape, except your highness presently descend.
Let him fight. We gave him arms today, and he is labouring for a knighthood man.
And enter Derby.
The prince, my lord, the prince! Succour him, he's close encompassed with a world of odds.
Then will he win a world of honour too, if he by valour can redeem him thence? If not, what remedy? We have more sons than one to comfort our declining age.
Enter Audley.
Renowned Edward, give me leave, I pray, to lead my soldiers where I may relieve your grace's son, in danger to be slain. The snares of French, like emmets on a bank, muster about him, whilst he, lion-like, entangled in the net of their assaults, frantically rends and bites the woven toil, but all in vain, he cannot free himself.
Audley, content. I will not have a man on pain of death sent forth to succour him. This is the day ordained by destiny to season his courage with those grievous thoughts, that if he breaketh out, Nestor's years on earth will make him saviour still of this exploit.
He shall not live to see those days.
Why, then his epitaph is lasting praise.
Sorry, I lost my spot in the script. Yet, good my lord, 'tis too much wilfulness to let his blood be spilt, that may be saved.
Exclaim no more, for none of you can tell whether a borrowed aid will serve or no. Perhaps he is already slayed or ta'en, and dare a falcon when she's in her flight, and ever after she'll be haggard-like. Let Edward be delivered by our hands, and still in danger he'll expect the like. But if himself redeem from thence, he will have vanquished cheerful death and fear, and ever after dread their force no more than if they were but babes or captive slaves.
Oh, cruel father, farewell, Edward, then.
Farewell, sweet prince, the hope of chivalry.
Oh, would my life might ransom him from death.
But soft, methinks I hear the dismal charge of trumpets' loud retreat. All are not slain, I hope, that went with him. Some will return with tidings, good or bad.
Indeed. Enter Prince Edward, in triumph, bearing in his hands his shivered lance, and the King of Bohemia, born before, wrapped in the colours. They run and embrace him.
Oh, joyful sight! Victorious Edward lives!
Welcome, brave prince!
Welcome, Plantagenet.
First, having done my duty as beseemed, lords, I regreet you all with hearty thanks. And now, behold, after my winter's toil, my painful voyage on the boisterous sea of war's devouring gulfs and steely rocks, I bring my fraught unto the wished port, my summer's hope, my travel's sweet reward. And here, with humble duty, I present this sacrifice, this first fruit of my sword, cropped and cut down even at the gate of death. The King of Bohemia, father, whom I slew with thousands, had entrenched me round about, and lay as thick upon my battered crest as on an anvil, with their ponderous glaives. Yet marble courage still did underprop and win my arms, with often blows, like with continual laboring woodman's axe that is enjoined to fell a load of oaks, began to falter. Straight I would record my gift you gave me, and my zealous vow, then new courage made me fresh again, that in despite I carved my passage forth, and put the multitude to speedy flight.
His sword borne by a soldier.
Lo, thus hath Edward's hand filled your request, and done, I hope, the duty of a knight.
Aye, well, thou hast deserved a knighthood, Ned, and therefore with thy sword, yet reeking warm with blood of those that fought to be thy bane. Arise, Prince Edward, trusty knight at arms. This day thou hast confounded me with joy, and proud thyself fit heir unto a king.
Here is a note, my gracious lord, of those that in this conflict of our foes were slain. 11 princes of esteem, 80 barons, 120 knights, and 30,000 common soldiers, and of our men, 1,000.
Our God be praised. Now, John of France, I hope thou knowest King Edward for no wantonness, no love-sick cockney, nor his soldiers' jades. But which way is the fearful king escaped?
Towards Poitiers, noble father, and his sons.
Ned, thou and Audley shall pursue them still. Myself and Derby will to Calais straight, and there be begirt that haven town with siege. Now lies it on an upshot. Therefore strike and wistly follow, whiles the game's on foot. What picture's this?
A pelican, my lord, wounding her bosom with her crooked beak, so that her nest of young ones may be fed with drops of blood that issue from her heart. The motto, sic and vos, and so should you.
And they exit. So, yeah, there's some interesting parenting skills being demonstrated here. Do you send in help for your son, or do you just say, let's see how it goes? It's a learning experience. I mean, to be fair, if it goes horribly wrong, he's not going to learn from it. But hey, it's that's sometimes the way it goes. So yeah, there's it opens with. I mean, you could argue that the scene could be broken down into other units. There's a sort of initial flurry of people running on and off. It's all active and chaotic, and then we get some sense of the score in the battle as it goes, and then yes, will he make it? Will Prince Edward make it out the other side? Are we actually ever in doubt? Thoughts about this scene? Rachael.
Just a question, because the pelican, the image of the pelican wounding herself to feed her young has come up in other plays. Where is this coming from, and is this a real thing, or is this some romantic idea of this period?
Ooh, who wants to step in on that one? It has come up many a time, and yes, it is a thing. I mean, it's not true, but it is a thing, as it were. Lynn, do you want to step in there?
That's basically it. It's not. No, it is no. It doesn't happen in nature, but it's something that was. My impression is widely believed to be a behavior in pelicans, that they wound themselves to feed their young. So. It was a symbol that came up in heraldry and in emblem books and stuff over and over again. Yes, Helen, can you confirm?
Yeah, the pelican in its piety was an image that appeared all over the place. I mean, it's like swallows hibernating at the bottom of ponds. Everybody believed it, and it just happens not to be true.
Or carrion breeding maggots, the idea of spontaneous generation. We know that that's not true. It just appears to be true because the larvae are too small to see. But yeah, it was a phenomenon in nature that was widely believed to occur.
Yeah.
Alan, then Aliki, then Briony.
I think we discussed the pelican imagery a week or two ago, because it was part of the Boleyn coat of arms, and therefore an indirect compliment to Elizabeth I through the maternal line.
Yeah, so it definitely has turned up a lot, and we should really have a proper official gloss on how that works so that we can just rattle it off every time it turns up. Note to self. Aliki, Briony, then Sarah.
So I've just been looking up the pelican. the first example Wikipedia gives is a hymn by St. Thomas Aquinas comparing Jesus to a pelican that feeds you with its blood. And there's also an Elizabeth I connection, since she gave herself the title of Mother of the Church of England with a kind of a whole pelican connotation about it. There's a pelican portrait, apparently, by Nicholas Hilliard, circa 1573, where I don't see any pelicans. Oh, there it is. She's wearing a pelican necklace.
Cool. Briony.
I was just going to say that from when we talked about it last time, I had a feeling it was connected to somebody specifically, and I had a feeling it was Elizabeth, but obviously that's been covered now.
Excellent. Sarah?
No, I was just, Aliki's already said it, I was just going to say that it was a specifically Christian allegory that was brought up by Aquinas. And it was a thing that then became part of medieval iconography, because Aquinas was such a influencer, and there was with the idea of the pelicans sacrificing themselves was kind of like an allegory for Christ, and then it crops up in a ton of medieval bestiaries after that. It becomes like one of those marginalia symbols that gets used a lot by monks, so that became very widespread.
Yeah, and it's interesting that it comes up at this point. It's this sort of slightly weird moment at the end where the king says, "What picture is this?" And you go, "Well, is it the one on his shield? Is it where is this bit? And if it's on the shield, isn't that the shield you gave him? So surely you should know." So it's quite a random moment, and it's not 100% clear, precisely how or why it's going on there, apart from to just sort of make that connection and sort of throw it at us. So yeah, old Sarah, then Lynn.
I kind of assumed it was a comment on Edward III's parenting skills, actually, or maybe it wasn't, but maybe there was a bit of a backhanded, double-edged thing going on with the playwright. I don't know, because the idea of the pelican sacrificing itself for its children, we've kind of got the reverse thing. We've just had the reverse thing going on. So I wondered if there was a slight satirical edge to that, maybe, but maybe not.
Well, I'm just looking at it, just going, well, is the text in the wrong place? Because the scene's a good end to the scene is "Whistly follow while the game's on foot." What picture's this? It feels like it was part of the earlier scene with the when they're presenting things. I'm just wondering whether it's just weirdly placed, or just in a slightly, because it just feels like it's got tacked onto the end of a very good way of ending a scene. So it doesn't feel like it's in the right place.
Oh, here we go again.
Yeah, Lynn, then Helen.
Oh, you're frozen again. Yes, yeah. To both those observations about the pelican, like what's it doing here, and is it undermining what happens in the rest of the scene? Because all throughout this, I was thinking about Stephen's observation yesterday that in the early modern period, when men spent too much time with women, even if it was courting them and wooing them and in fact having sex with them, whatever, that was considered effeminizing. It kind of weakened you to spend too much time with women and too much time thinking about love and so forth, and that made you weak and it made you effeminate. And this whole sort of movement that we've just completed is the opposite of that kind of hyper masculinity, where you throw your kid in the deep end of the pool rather than teaching him to swim in any kind of nurturing way. And that, this kind of attitude seems really toxic to us now, but is the play trying to frame this hyper masculinity as admirable? And it seems that it is, until you get to this pelican moment that undermines it a little bit. So I have to wonder what's going on here.
Helen.
Yeah, I had assumed that this was one of the captured shields from one of the others. One of the people that that the Black Prince had, they're not calling him that here, are they? Prince Edward had brought in, because I am pretty certain that he would be wearing the Royal Arms of England with a First Sons difference label. And I mean, it's later that he gets the feathers.
So, yes, odd bit of text that doesn't quite seem like it's in the right place. But maybe it is. Who knows? Rachael.
Just the tone of this scene and then the one before it, they're so different from the other scenes where it was like a laugh and then it was serious. This just seems like they're just getting into the, the history of it now, and they're just going, I don't know how to say it, that the setup is done and now the battle can begin, and it's like this is the main part of it. I don't know, like they're playing it more straight than before, than comedic.
Yes, questions of tone over the shape of the text overall, which we may elaborate more in final thoughts. We have some more material to do before we close the session, but we are running a little low on time now. Act 4, Scene 1, as it has been labelled. Enter Lord Mountford with a coronet in his hand, with him the Earl of Salisbury.
My Lord of Salisbury, since by your aid mine enemy Sir Charles Blois is slain, and I again am quietly possessed in Brittany's dukedom, know that I resolve for this kind furtherance of your king and you to swear allegiance to his majesty, in sign whereof receive this coronet. Bear it unto him, and with all mine oath, never to be but Edward's faithful friend.
I take it, Mountford. Thus I hope ere long the whole dominions of the realm of France will be surrendered to his conquering hand.
Exit Montford.
Now, if I knew but safely how to pass, I would at Calais gladly meet his grace. Whether I am by letter certified that he intends to have his own hosts removed, it shall be so. This policy will serve. Ho! Who is within? Bring Villiers to me.
And enter Villiers.
Villiers, thou knowest thou art my prisoner, and that I might for ransom, if I would, require of thee 100,000 francs, or else retain and keep thee captive still. But so it is. For that a smaller charge thou mayst be quit, and if thou wilt thyself, and this is it, procure me but a passport of Charles the Duke of Normandy, that I without restraint may have recourse to Calais, through all the countries where he hath to do, which thou mayst easily obtain, I think. By reason I have often heard thee say he and thou were students once together, and then thou shalt be set at liberty. How sayest thou? Wilt thou undertake to do it?
I will, my lord, but I must speak with him.
Why, so thou shalt. Take horse, and post from hence. Only before thou goest, swear by thy faith, that if thou canst not compass my desire, thou wilt return my prisoner back again, and that shall be a sufficient warrant for me.
To that condition I agree, my lord, and will unfeignedly perform the same.
And exit Villiers.
Farewell, Villiers. Thus once I mean to try a Frenchman's faith.
And exit. We're going to go straight into Act 4, Scene 2. Enter King Edward and Derby with soldiers.
Since they refuse our proffered league, my lord, I will not ope their gates and let us in. We will entrench ourselves on every side, that neither victuals nor supply of men may come to succour this accursed town. Famine shall combat where our swords are stopped.
Enter 6 poor Frenchmen, only 2 of them will speak.
The promised aid that made them stand aloof is now retired and gone another way. It will repent them of their stubborn will. And what are these poor ragged slaves, my lord?
Ask what they are. It seems they come from Calais.
You, wretched patterns of despair and woe, what are you? Living men, or gliding ghosts crept from your graves to walk upon the earth?
No ghosts, my lord, but men that breathe a life far worse than is the quiet sleep of death. We are distressed, poor inhabitants, that long have been diseased, sick, and lame. And now, because we are not fit to serve, the captain of the town has thrust us forth, that so expense of victuals may be saved.
A charitable deed, no doubt, and worthy praise. But how do you imagine then to speed? We are your enemies. In such a case we can no less but put ye to the sword, since when we proffered truce it was refused.
And if your grace no otherwise vouchsafe, as welcome death is unto us as life.
Poor silly men, much wronged and more distressed, go, Derby, go, and see they be relieved. Command that victuals be appointed them, and give to every one 5 crowns apiece. The lion scorns to touch the yielding prey, and Edward's sword must flesh itself in such as wilful stubbornness hath made perverse.
Enter Lord Percy.
Lord Percy, welcome. What's the news in England?
The Queen, my lord, comes here to your grace, and from our Highness and the Lord Vice-Regent, I bring this happy tidings of success. David of Scotland, lately up in arms, thinking, belike, he soonest should prevail, your Highness being absent from the realm, is, by the fruitful service of your peers, and painful travail of the Queen herself, that big with child was every day in arms, vanquished, subdued, and taken prisoner.
Thanks, Percy, for thy news with all my heart. What was he took him prisoner in the field?
An esquire, my lord, John Copeland is his name, who since, entreated by her majesty, denies to make surrender of his prize to any but unto your grace alone, whereat the Queen is grievously displeased.
Well, then we'll have a pursuivant dispatched to summon Copeland hither out of hand, and with him he shall bring his prisoner king.
The Queen's, my lord, herself by this at sea, and purposeth, as soon as wind will serve, to land at Calais and to visit you.
She shall be welcome, and to wait her coming, I'll pitch my tent near to the sandy shore.
Enter a French captain who I'll ask Aliki. Could you be the French captain, please?
The burgess of Calais, mighty king, have by council willingly decreed to yield the town and castle to your hands, upon condition it will please your grace to grant them benefit of life and goods.
They will so. Then belike they may command, dispose, elect, and govern as they list. No, sirrah, tell them, since they did refuse our princely clemency at first proclaimed, they shall not have it now, although they would. I will accept of naught but fire and sword, except within these 2 days 6 of them, that are the wealthiest merchants in the town, come naked, all but for their linen shirts, with each a halter hanged about his neck, and prostrate yield themselves upon their knees, to be afflicted, hanged, or what I please. And so you may inform their masterships.
And exeunt Edward and Percy.
This is to trust the broken staff. Had we not been persuaded Jean, our king, would with his army have relieved the town, we had not stood upon defiance so. It is past that no man can recall, and better some do go to rack them all.
And exit the captain, and there we stop. So Ace is an interesting interpretation of the burghers of Calais situation. We've got 2 scenes interlocking. We've got interesting questions going up. We've got mention of the Queen. We haven't heard from the Queen, the existence of the Queen. We're going to meet the Queen. next time. Promise we will actually encounter her rather than as an offstage character. We have various French people of varying statuses here, and we are pausing essentially in the mid-flow of things, so there is more to come touching on these subjects. But thoughts from the room before we go into final thoughts? Briony.
An interesting, if not slightly kind of convenient for them concept that the French are such an awful race of people that even their own peasants need saving from them, kind of thing. I like that. Yes,
there is an interesting way that this is presenting historical events here. Lynn.
Yeah, the English teacher in me is rearing her head. And I get focused on the individual words sometimes, and it occurs to me that I have in these several early modern texts that I have read, I've never heard the adjective silly applied to men. Silly women, silly sheep, but never silly men. And silly, I think I should say, does not mean then what it means now. It means more like simple or weak or innocent, or it originally meant like blessed, and then it went from like blessed to innocent to so anyway the meaning morphed, and it doesn't mean goofy. It meant it meant sort of simple or weak, and it's always applied to women and sometimes to sheep, but here it's silly men, and so it sort of is a hint at the effeminizing of the French.
Other thoughts on this particular incident, and these intersecting scenes of going on here? Before I go to final thoughts, because I will otherwise just go straight to final thoughts and make my way around the room because we are just approaching extra time. I see lots of thinking faces. I see people are just assembling their thoughts now to see. Of course, you don't have to have a final thought. You can just throw in just the town, say move on. That's always allowed. And we're all now going to get distracted by a cat. So, I goodness only knows whether we'll have anything additional to say. So I'll go around the room. Aliki, do you have any final thoughts about the place so far?
Not really. I'm having a good time, but I love a history play.
Valentina, you've stepped in mid-session. You missed last time. How are you finding this adventure in France?
To be honest, it's less confusing than others have stepped on in mid-session on. No, it's I'm enjoying it so far.
I mean, the narrative flow is really clear in this. It doesn't matter that you weren't here yesterday, because most of what was said yesterday did not directly pertain to what's happened today. Helen, any final thoughts?
Well, it's quite unlike yesterday. I mean, yesterday seemed to be far more original. This seems to be far more a dramatized chronicle. But it is, the language is quite remarkable. I've never read it before, and I must say I'm taking it in. I'm going to have to go back over it many times, maybe.
I mean, there are some fascinating set piece speeches. There's all sorts of interesting little stuff to dig into, and yet it is also doing that narrative and then thing, keeping the story moving forward. So it is doing a very different kind of game to the most of the material that we looked at yesterday. Stephen, do you have any final thoughts?
Yeah, well, sort of following on from Helen's actually. I'm wondering what's going on here in terms of chivalry, in the sense that it's part of the image of medieval chivalry is the courtly knight who woos, and that's kind of comprehensively it's sort of cosplayed, but really badly in the previous couple of acts, in that he is being a courtly wooer, but he's a total tyrant. And here we have we have the common people turning up, basically in the same way that they do in more comic plays, to show what a good fellow the king is. But that what we don't get is on stage chivalry in action. You know, all this Black Prince stuff. It's all kind of, oh no, the Black Prince he's gonna die. Oh no, he's all right. He's fantastic victory against 900 Frenchmen or whatever it is. But we don't get to see it. And so the fact that it is such a sort of bold, depiction of the chronicle, as Helen's pointed out, I think it's quite interesting in the sense of what it might be countering, which is, a much more heroic and nobility-centered view of actual warfare. I mean, the 100 Years' War was absolutely bloody dreadful in terms of, the English sort of wandered around France for 100 years, basically napalming the place, sort of chevauché, which is absolutely sort of devastating, and yet what we get here is a refusal of a certain kind of nobles-driven, knightly, courtly, great men version, in a sense. So I'm not sure I can do it, but I'm trying to piece together in my head this and what happened yesterday, both as refusals of perhaps an easier route in terms of these were great big battles, wonderful victories, lots of knights doing knightly things and saving all the rest of us.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting because the people at the time and to degree now might know what will happen with Prince Edward in the future. They may know that he's the king we never got. But the thing is, the casual viewer might not know when and how he died. So that there might be some sense of jeopardy as created as to whether he survives incidents here, and that might be a game the play is actually playing with us, because, as I say, the casual viewer might know the future of Prince Edward, known as the Black Prince, but they might not know enough to know precisely how his narrative is going to play out here. And so there is that element as to where the play is going with his narrative, because it's really interesting setting up this future king in terms of what you may or may not know about where that is going, which I quite like. Tamara, any final thoughts?
I mean, I'm not here tomorrow, and I regret that now. Because I want to see where this is going, mostly because I'm stuck on the character that I read. I put in the chat a while back that he gives me serious Denethor vibes. And so yeah, I think we talked about it yesterday as well with this first part of the play, and I'm looking at Valentina right now, and she's missed that bit, which had nothing to do with the history play.
Well, the first scene did. The first scene set up everything that happened today.
But yeah,
then it went somewhere else.
Yeah, it's a bit sort of, we're gonna do a history play. Hang on, and it basically what I'm trying to say is it's really hard to root for Edward, and right now I'm getting more tyrant vibes than somebody I can root for. So again, going straight into, I want to see this on stage and see how it's done, because basically you're watching somebody who's really not nice for the whole thing.
Well, actually, I'll go back to Valentina briefly to put Valentina on the spot. Is how are you feeling about King Edward as a character from this session, as you've only seen him today?
Well, yeah, not extra positive. It seems a bit. You know what? It seems more like it's more of a king in what like imaginary a king is, as in like somebody who gives orders and stands back. Than most of the kings we actually encounter in these plays. But yeah, not the biggest fan of him.
But are you particularly against him, or is it just somewhere in the middle?
No, it's like what he said about his son and going like, oh, like, I have other sons. It's fine. If he dies, he dies. I was a bit like, what? Wait a second. What the hell? But it's not like, I don't know if I would call him a tyrant. Like, yeah, I'm not like, I'm a bit in the middle. Also because I've not seen him do that much.
He's harangued some Frenchmen.
Yeah, and then news come in about the Queen having managed to, to defend the rest of the reign against the Scottish. So it's not really. Yeah, he's sitting on his chair.
Yeah. Alan, any final thoughts?
I must admit that I felt yesterday's first two acts worked very well as a play on their own. The two acts that we've done today, or the act and a chunk, don't really seem to be going anywhere interesting. They seem to be very much chronicle plays, almost aimed at an early version of Jingo. Let's be nasty to any foreigners we can come across. So it's Daily Mail before the invention of the printing press. So this section has not really worked for me in terms of developing anything interesting.
Who now? Sarah. Have I gone to Sarah? No, I haven't gone to Sarah. Sarah, final thoughts?
Yes, I can only echo what other people say, really. I kind of agree with Alan. I am super impressed with Stephen, though, for coming up with a theory that manages to unite the first half with the second half. No, that was really good, because oh yeah, kind of like going against the expectation of chivalry. Oh yeah, that could work. Because I am super impressed that you came up with that, Stephen, because I cannot think of anything else that connects the first half with the second half. And the problem is that I really enjoyed yesterday. The first half, not the first half, the first third. It was cracking. It was so good. Like Helen said, it was original. And it was complex, and you had this, massive conflict going on, and all this psychology of how everyone was acting and then reacting, and I loved it because I love that kind of play. And then today, it's been very chronically, and there has been some beautiful language. That Mariner's speech is going to stay with me for some time to come. But I just kept thinking today, about a pair of friends, like a couple of mates, or maybe even a couple going to see this in a playhouse in Tudor times, and one of them's kind of dragged the other one along, and they're like, oh no, it's not another chronicle play, oh, it's going to be all battles and I'm going to find it really boring. And then they start watching it, and the one who's been complaining about it beforehand is like, oh, this is not what I was expecting, this is quite good. And the guy who was expecting the chronicle play was like, oh no, this is not what I came to see. And then we get to Act 3, and all of a sudden he's like, oh yeah, no, right, okay, I'll just get another flag, and this is what I'm here for. And the other one's like, oh, okay, this is disappointing now, because there's just such a disjunct between them. And it was interesting when we had that little moment of Edward making that decision about his son. I'm like, oh, hello, are things going to pick up here? And they kind of didn't, but I suppose the first section that we did yesterday will colour the audience's view of Edward in that choice that he makes, based on the choices that he made earlier on in the play. So I suppose that it does maybe have some influence, but we've just really had no character development. We've just had a lot of people just shouting at each other, really, and it's not my thing. I'm really hoping it perks up again tomorrow, because I so enjoyed it yesterday. But yeah.
They're telling a very different story.
They certainly
basically,
are.
It's a fundamentally different story.
Yeah.
And storytelling techniques are being used.
Which is such a weird thing for a playwright to, we don't know who wrote this, so fair enough. But it just makes me think: what were they thinking? What made them think that this was a good idea to structure their play in this way?
Well, we're not here to speculate on that.
No.
But we'll go to Rachael for final thoughts.
No. Maybe there's just multiple writers, and that there's a break in between these writers, and we just had somebody who was different in the earlier scenes, and now we've got maybe somebody who specializes in I don't know, action scenes, these war ones more.
Other final thoughts and about today's material, Rachael. Do you have more?
No, I meant yeah. No, I was just gonna say it's very different from yesterday, but I do think maybe that if there are multiple writers, then the earlier King John scene with the French people is by the same person. I don't know. This is it's interesting because it seems to blend different genres, not modern genres, but that neoclassical, and then I don't know, some of the other stuff that we usually see in the mornings.
Who's next? Lynn, final thoughts.
Yeah, I'm in a similar intellectual space as Stephen, if I can claim that, but for slightly different reasons. So what is this play's take on chivalry? Is it glorious and admirable, and we're winning all these battles even though we're the underdog? And isn't that fabulous? And we're also brave and manly men. At first blush, you would look at this text and say, okay, maybe that's what we're doing in this movement of the play. But most of the audience would have known, and of course the playwright, singular or plural, would have known that bravely conquered everything despite the odds Prince Edward did not live to succeed his father, and that Edward, the younger Edward's son, Richard, was not a successful king and was in fact deposed by his cousin, whence followed lots of unpleasantness, and that even with a moment of glory a few generations later with Henry V, and Henry V's son was also a terrible monarch and lost pretty much everything in France, and that when this play was written, by the time this play was written, even Calais had been lost. So all the English holdings on the continent were gone by the time anyone was seeing this play. So it's like it is all for naught in the long game. And most of the audience had to have been keenly aware of that. So what are we doing? What is this play's take on war and chivalry and all of that manly stuff?
Yeah, because there's that. It's an interesting. Sarah Semi brought it up earlier about the expectations of an audience coming to see a play about Edward III is going to be Cressy, etc. That's the thing that you're here for. And we've had that bit, but there are other high points in this campaign from the English perspective. So it's interesting as to what the play, or what the expectation of what the play should be delivering, and what everyone who turns up are expecting from it. In the same way that any franchise, the expectation of what you want from the next installment and what they should be doing, and if someone does something else, why are they doing that? Because we're here for the same, but just slightly different, so it's not too different, but enough sameness, but without being too samey, so that we can milk that cash cow till it's all over. Eric, final thoughts, please, before I fall off the edge of that discourse.
Yeah, I don't know. It's very different from yesterday. I mean, as we've already said, I don't know if I really have anything to add. I really love the bit of like, yeah, let him get killed. It's fine. I have more. Obviously that was sort of a tense moment, but also kind of funny at some point. Kind of.
Okay, we have run out of time, so sadly we have to close the session. Yeah,
I had something to say.
You had something more to say?
No, I had something to say. You haven't called on me.
I've got you crossed off.
Oh, then I must have said
You could say it. I'm not going to stop you. It's fine, but just on an admin thing, I must have accidentally crossed you off.
I just wanted to point out that the Earl of Salisbury actually has a part in this, and none of us really clocked that this was the husband.
From earlier, yeah. I think someone vaguely mentioned it, and that was it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I rather hoped that when they started talking about the Scots, that the army that had captured the King of Scots might have been led not by the Queen, but by the Countess. But I've no doubt the Countess was there.
Okay. Fanfic is forthcoming. So all that remains is thank all the wonderful readers in the room. Thank you very much, everybody, and goodbye.
Bye.